Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley speaking to you from a sweltering Washington, D.C. And, here in the nation's capital, the question of Syria remains front and center. We got many things going on. We've got Egypt. We've got the struggle over the filibuster. We've got the bankruptcy of Detroit. We'll talk about that in just a second. Let's just try to do justice to Syria very briefly. We've got an interview later in the program with Randy Credico, running for mayor of New York City, now on the Democratic primary ballot, and he wants to share with us his plan to launch a new nationwide party starting from the city of New York. It's the Tax Wall Street Party, and he wants to make his campaign, the prolongation of his campaign beyond the Democratic primary all the way to November, the main vehicle for that. But let's just look at Syria first of all. The positive thing about Syria is another week has gone by and there is no big war. The pressure of Skull and Bones Kerry, of McCain, of the British and the French and the Israelis and the neocons and all these people who want Obama to order the big bombing raid and the big land invasion, the answer is still no. Nothing is happening. Skull and Bones Kerry went to a refugee camp this week and was treated badly because they say, service is lousy. Where are our guns? We want the American taxpayer to cough up. The New York Times has an article in which they acknowledge that Assad is winning. And that's, I guess, once the New York Times acknowledges it, maybe it means that the war is going to end soon. I don't know. We can't be quite that sanguine, but that is the general idea, right? It's let's see how they put it here in the New York Times. July 17th, 2013. The New York Times has finally figured out, only 6 weeks after the fall of Qusair, that momentum shifts in Syria, bolstering Assad's position. Yes, the momentum has shifted and Assad's position is bolstered. And we've gone through the various questions here. The money that Obama has requested, apparently, to arm the death squads is tied up, bottled up in the Congress, and the various people are fighting about it, and that includes McCain. Now, this is interesting, right? We know McCain is dominated by rage. He would be down there in the middle inferno among the rage balls, or maybe different ways of the violent, I guess he would be, the seventh circle. McCain was at a hearing. General Dempsey, Obama's tame general, General Dempsey wants to get confirmed by the Senate for a second 2-year term as the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And McCain takes advantage of this to rough him up with a rage fit. So McCain asks him, Dempsey, what's worse, the damage that we will have if we don't do anything, or the damage that we will have if Assad is allowed to stay in power, or the risk of getting him out of power? And this was a real acrimonious, angry exchange, right, where McCain said, you've done nothing, and Dempsey said, no, it's not true, we haven't done anything. The details interest us less than the animus, right, the fact that they're fighting among themselves. This is just what we want. Nothing could be better. So let McCain fight Dempsey, insult him, let Dempsey get his back up, let him fight back in various ways that he has, and the result is the death squads are losing. There's even death squad fratricide, right? When one of the things now, even the TV news in the evening is signaling that since the Hamami assassination, since Hamami, the friend of Idris at the Free Syrian Army, since he was offed by the emir, the coastal emir of the Islamic Emirate of Iraq and the Levant, the death squads are fighting among themselves. Every death squad is now fighting on two fronts, against its rival death squads and against the Syrian army. And I think we can say this rebellion is doomed. And that's why it would have been a good thing for Obama and Putin to sit down and say, let's manage the wrapping up of this doomed rebellion. The other thing, of course, is that the CIA has tried to pull out Navalny in Moscow. He's just been sentenced to a stiff jail term. Was it enough? I don't know. I don't know the law. Interesting that the Russian commentator Markov of the Plekhanov University points out that this was an attempt by a shadowy group of international financiers pick Navalny as the vehicle for a color revolution on the Ukrainian or Georgian model to try to overthrow Putin. It hasn't worked. And we want to say from here, a weak Russia is disastrous. We saw under Medvedev when the Russia was weak and allowed the West to run wild, Libya was bombed, and the world situation took a very ominous turn. Now that Putin is back, there's a clear message: back off, you Western imperialists, and that's the message that we need. The only language that a degenerate like John Forbes Kerry understands is precisely that. Now, Detroit, bankrupt. Well, here's the problem now. Once you're bankrupt, you're in, I believe it's Chapter 9 bankruptcy. Here are the guidelines. All derivatives must be wiped out. No derivatives should be considered enforceable. All derivatives go to the delete button and the shredder. At the same time, the bondholders will take a bath. The bondholders need a haircut and a bath. They need to essentially renounce a very large portion. I would say about 90% of their bonds should be renounced. That will allow us to maintain the payments to the pensioners, the people who need old age pensions, health care pensions, and other contractual obligations, because all of those are contracts. Those are labor contracts with real people, and we've got to put people first. We've got to put the preservation of labor power and, indeed, of the general standards of civilization. Those things have to take precedence over the sanctity of debt. And don't let little Rand or Ron Paul or any Austrian tell you any different. And then how could Detroit finance itself? Well, thanks to Helicopter Ben. Again, all we need is one call from a real president to the Federal Reserve saying, Ben, I want to thank you for your willingness to put forward $500 billion as a special Detroit window. We have an AIG window. We have Maiden Lane 1, Maiden Lane 2. This is all AIG. How about a window for Detroit? Let's have a Detroit window, a credit stimulus, $500 billion or something of this magnitude to rebuild the city, to maintain the payments that represent civilization, to avoid selling off the Detroit Art Institute in the same way that poor Harrisburg just had an auction of the poor objects that they had assembled to try to attract some poor tourist business with a Wild West museum, right? They had a couple of pistols that belonged to General Custer, and those sold for $35,000 or $40,000. Now, let's not have the art treasures of Detroit sold off, right? I'm thinking of the Nazis in World War II looting art collections, stealing it, and taking it back. Goering, in particular, taking it back to his castle. No. So no cuts for people. Only bondholders. Derivatives wiped out. Bondholders take a bath. No cuts for people. And the future of Detroit is financed as a 0% century bond window, the special Detroit credit stimulus facility opened up by Helicopter Ben as a result of popular pressure and political pressure. That's the answer. Back in a minute. Welcome back to the World Crisis Radio. And it's the afternoon of July 19th. It's Friday, July 19th, and here we are in Washington, D.C., and, of course, we're sweltering. Now, we've just outlined the overall situation in the Middle East. Even the New York Times concedes Assad is winning, and that is the overarching reality. In the meantime, we look at somebody like Snowden and his guru, Glenn Greenwald, right? I guess there's a competition between little Lord Julian Assange, operating from his embassy digs, his pied-à-terre in central London, and Glenn Greenwald, another cosmopolitan, I guess, operating from Rio de Janeiro down there in Brazil. Who controls Snowden? Well, it looks like Glenn Greenwald controls the information flow. Can you imagine? Snowden claims to be a friend of transparency. He takes these materials from the NSA, fine, and he gives them to The Guardian and to the Washington Post. Barton Gellman of the Washington Post, and even worse, Greenwald of the left wing of British intelligence, the London Guardian. And they're deciding, those two, Gellman and Greenwald, decide what you get to know. Now, it's also clear that Putin is treating him like Typhoid Mary with good reason. Basically, it's a grudging concession. Look, we don't really want you here. We wish you hadn't come here. You're an unwanted Christmas gift for us. But if you insist, if you must, if you're going to embarrass me and put me on the spot, well, then you can stay. But make sure you shut your yap. No provocations, please. We know who you are. Don't try the provocations. Now, if you look at this, we're told, according to The Hill of today here in Washington, The Hill speculates that the Obama White House is signaling that they're going to call off the meeting with Putin that was scheduled for September, I believe it is. It's the G20, I think, and at the edge of the G20, there was going to be a special bilateral Putin meeting with Obama. Now, what we see, therefore, is the ability of Snowden and his guru, Glenn Greenwald, in the service of British intelligence to wreck the possibility of a convergence. And what would the convergence be, pray tell? Obama doesn't want the big war in Syria. He wants drones, assassinations, all that other stuff. We're not fools. We can see what he wants. But he doesn't want the 1,000 bombers, and he doesn't want the 5 infantry divisions. That would destroy him. He'd be impeached. Yeah, he would. And he'd be impeached all around. So Putin is also interested in saving the Assad regime and trying to get the death squads out of there. Wouldn't there be the potential for a convergence? And in the middle, up pops Snowden, the CIA provocateur. Now, pray tell, what global power has a track record of playing the United States against Russia for its own benefit? 3 guesses. UK, Britain, England, Perfide Albion, they're the ones. And they are, of course, the sponsors of Snowden. The Vichy French, of course, with Hollande and Fabius, the nostalgics of the occupation, the Pétainistes. Yeah, we have them. But then we have the Colonel Blimps, the British. So the British are getting good mileage out of their Snowden operation. What they started with their London Guardian. White House signals Obama may snub Putin. Who benefits from that? London. And who's going to suffer? Well, the Syrian people, because otherwise there's an obvious common interest of these two. Now, let's move over to Egypt for a second. Here we have actually some very good news, and this is we're going to get more details about this, but the bare fact is already enough. The new Egyptian government has dumped the IMF. Dumped the IMF. Morsi and his dubious, smelly, fishy Muslim Brotherhood were flirting with the IMF. They were imposing conditionalities. Last November, they doubled the price of gasoline. They signaled that they would increase, they did increase the sales tax on poor people. A regressive tax has nothing to do with social justice, is the negation of social justice. And they were going to move on then to a value-added tax. Well, right now, the new government has said, we don't want to negotiate with the IMF anymore. The International Monetary Fund, they say, has been demanding that we reduce our subsidies on food, on motor vehicle fuels, gasoline, household fuels, right, for heating and for cooking in the home, cooking oil, bread, other staples, right? These are all subsidized. The system goes back to Nasser, and it is absolutely essential. It is not unsustainable. It's only unsustainable if the rich people continue to evade taxes and if the finance oligarchs don't pay the Wall Street, the local equivalent of the Wall Street sales tax. So isn't that something? The Muslim Brotherhood, with their great doctrine of Muslim social solidarity and that they were going to increase the living standard of the poorest workers and peasants, strike out. They are ready for dirty deals with the IMF. And now this new government, even though the new government has obvious IMF shills in visible positions, al-Baradei is an IMF shill. If he's not an IMF shill, I don't know who is. And then we have this the prime minister, who's a former technocratic finance minister, Belby. I can't get it quite right. I'll learn by next week. This Belby is also an IMF type, but even so, they turn away from the IMF. They say, we'll keep our subsidies. They're happy to do this because they can get $12 billion from the Gulf, from the Saudis, from the Emirates, from Kuwait, and from some others. And Qatar, the gutter people, the gutter dwellers, they're the ones who are the odd man out. They're the ones who are the big losers in this. And apparently they knew what was coming because that's when the handwriting was on the wall for Morsi. That is when the old emir was bounced out by his ambitious son, right? A palace coup, I guess, although conceivably, somewhat orderly compared to what they've had in the past. No shooting and not that much rough stuff, wet work, whatever. So my hypothesis, there must be Nasserist officers and Nasserist civil servants, Nasserist top government officials in the Egyptian power combination. Because otherwise, with Baradei and Belby, they would say, oh, yes, come on in. We're going to cut the bread subsidies. Please be our guest. And somehow the answer is now no, despite the obvious proclivities of these two rotten characters. So it means that there are Nasserists that work behind the scenes, and that's the best we can hope for. So I think Egypt, once again, cautious optimism. The Syrian embassy is open. The IMF has been kicked out, and that's a big improvement from what we had before. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Let's talk to here in Washington, D.C. It's sweltering afternoon here in the middle of July. It's summer, right? We've just had the All-Star break, a time to look forward and backward a little bit. Let's look at the domestic situation. We've been much concerned with foreign affairs. Right now, we are going into some pretty big austerity fights. We've just had the interest rate on student loans doubled from 3.4 to 6.8% on the Stafford loan, doubled on July 1st. This was a calculated insult by the reactionary Republicans to the younger generation. I put it in the same class with little Ron Paul, the leprechaun, his thank you to his duped college kid backers, right? Pathetic dupes, suckers, fall guys, useful idiots. They went out and worked for him. And then when it came time to decide a year ago whether it should double from 3.4 to 6.8% on the Stafford loan, the little leprechaun voted to double it because that was the dictate of his Austrian school. Well, again, one Austrian was enough. See if you can guess which Austrian I mean. Quite infamous. So that's going to be coming up now. There's a deal. It's a dirty deal. It's a dirty deal that says there's going to be a momentary lowering, but the resulting interest rate will be a floating rate until the time you lock in the loan. In other words, the Republicans wanted the worst of all possible worlds, where you borrow money and then find out that the interest rate has doubled, right? This wonderful, wonderful result that we had with floating rate, adjustable rate mortgages in the housing crisis. Well, those reactionary Republicans are determined to duplicate that against students, right, to sort of break their spirit, right, maybe to break them so they'll be docile and obedient for the rest of their lives, right, to reduce them to despair. But this is what we're going to get is bad enough. It's the Obama version, which is that the interest rate fluctuates according to the 10-year Treasury note, and then once you buy it, though, then you've locked in at that rate. So you have a certain degree of predictability. In other words, you know how much you're going to get ripped off. But the problem, again, with this is that even though right now that's down there comparable to the 3%, 3.4% rate, it probably won't stay that way very long, because we will tend to have these interest rates go up, right, as the forces of usury push back and forth, right? And that will mean that the interest rate on these student loans might get up to 7, 8, 9, 10%, right? Maybe it's not clear what the upper limit, if there is a cap. Maybe there's no cap. So all of this coming up. Now, remember, one of the premises of this program is that we advocate the absolute destruction of the Republican Party, USA. We want them destroyed as a national party as soon as possible. We want them destroyed everywhere they exist. But realistic is that they could be destroyed as a national party, and their representation could be reduced to the most backward, most reactionary, most racist, most benighted backwaters of the Deep South, the southern states, the former Confederate States of America. And that would mean probably not Georgia, not North Carolina, not Florida, not even parts of Texas, right? But just the usual Alabama, Mississippi, places like this. And then, after the destruction of the Republican Party, we advocate splitting the Democratic Party into two parts. And one would be these monsters like Durbin and Schumer and the rest of them, the Wall Street Democrats, and that's Obama too, for sure. And on the other hand, people who represent something slightly different, which would be Elizabeth Warren, Sherrod Brown from Ohio, Marcy Kaptur, DeFazio, various other people at different times, right, to greater or lesser degree, are not quite such total prisoners of the Wall Street orthodoxy. One of the best ways to sift them is the Wall Street sales tax. So how do we stand on this right now? Interesting thing this week, the Washington publications. I have here The Hill of July 16th, right, Monday, and I've got it's July, and I've got Politico of July 15th. I guess both of them are from the 15th. So Politico, their headline on the front page: with lame duck Obama, 2016 started yesterday. So they're telling us that Obama is beat up. He's much the worse for wear. The first 6 or 9 months of the new term have been bad for him, looking more and more like a lame duck. Hillary Clinton preening and profiling. God save us from this warmonger, this mediocrity, this incompetent. Isn't there something better? Well, that's up to us. So that's Politico. Now, here's also The Hill, start of the week, right? The Monday edition of the Hill, indeed the 15th of July. And here we have a picture of Obama with Boehner, weak versus weaker. Both President Obama and Speaker Boehner are struggling to gain leverage in a number of upcoming fights over policy. The GOP is divided, and Boehner has faced rebellions, while the president has suffered a depletion of his political capital over recent months. Now, what we see is a regime that is weak and discredited in all of its odious ramifications. Now, there's nothing in any of this to support. Let's start with Obama, right? He's a lame duck. He's looking very weak, right? He did this big gun control campaign, nothing. Forced to stay out of the picture on immigration because otherwise there's a backlash. And on Syria, again, I think on Syria, some of this stuff is he connives to make it happen because he wants to avoid something even worse. But he can't get the arms for Syria through the Congress, and his demand that Assad must go has not been translated into reality, thank God. So, again, he's looking pretty weak. He wants to avoid a big war, and we will continue to note that as a merit, right? That the one thing that makes Obama preferable in a narrow issue sense, he doesn't want the big war in Syria. No 1,000-bomber raid, no 5 divisions on the ground, right? Which is what McCain wants, the British want it, the French want it, the neocons want it, Secretary of State John Forbes Kerry of Skull and Bones, they all want the big war. Obama says no, because I'm the one who's going to get impeached. He does it for himself, obviously, but this leaves him weak. Now, Boehner is pathetic, right? Boehner has got a continuous rebellion of these ultra-reactionaries, the yahoos and lunatics of the Tea Party, extremists, saboteurs, right-wing anarchists, anti-government cliques in there, whatever they are, right? Irrationalists. They have now done him the favor of coming up with a farm bill which is absolutely doomed. In other words, most of the things coming out of the House are simply exercises in futility. They get you nowhere. Oh, another repeal of Obamacare. Oh, God. And a farm bill that has nothing about food stamps in it, right? So you're gratuitously signaling genocide against the American people. And it's not going to go anywhere, right? So what's the point of this? We'll be back in a minute to welcome back to World Crisis Radio, Webster Tarpley in Washington. So Boehner and his House lunatic caucus with extremists and generally enemies of civilization, I'm afraid. What they do is all futile, right? They pass a farm bill with no food stamp component. They want to repeal Obamacare, again, for the 99th time. It doesn't work. They pass a student loan bill, which is also doomed. It's not acceptable to anybody in the Senate. So it just doesn't get anywhere, right? So it's just an exercise. It's an exercise in futility. The thing about Obamacare, just before we leave it, Obamacare is coming up, right? You can start registering for Obamacare on October 1st, and you can start getting benefits January 1st. We have a funny cartoon today in the Washington Post. It's one of these Tom Told cartoons, and he's got a picture of a big, fat Republican elephant, and it's a sick room in a hospital. So we've got a patient in the bed, and then you've got a drip, right? An intravenous drip. And the instead of having the line, the tube from the intravenous drip go directly to the patient, the Republican elephant has put that on his seat, and he's sitting on the tube. And then he looks at, and obviously nothing can get through because he's crushing the tube. So the fat Republican elephant looks at the patient and says, "See, it's not working." And the drip is labeled Obamacare. So obviously they're sabotaging this every way they can. I've tried to point out the main fear of the reactionary Republicans is they don't want you to get the idea that you have a right to health care. Remember Ron Paul, the leprechaun? One of his favorite lines is, there is no right to health care, not if you're taking it from somebody else. Well, don't look at it that way. Everybody has a right to health care, and there is enough largesse, provided you have the Wall Street sales tax and a few obvious other things. You have more than enough to finance this stuff. So it's coming up. So the Republicans they're trying to convince you that you don't like something that hasn't even started to exist. Now, there are people in their 50s, their late 50s, their early 60s, people who are unemployed maybe and have no health care, and they're trying to hang on they were trying to hang on until they got to be 65 so they could get Medicare, and then with Medicare they could then proceed to get some health care work done. Right now, some of those people they're straining, right? They're trying to hold on. They're trying to stay alive until January 1st, so that at that point the question of the pre-existing condition will lapse. And there's also this matter of the lifetime cap. Some people have reached a lifetime cap, and the insurance company says, sorry, we paid enough for you, go and die. Well, no, not in the United States. I'm sorry. If you advocate that, there's an appointment for you at Nuremberg, and it won't be pretty, and you don't want to go. So drop that crap. We saw on television the other day a 1-year-old kid, a baby, a toddler, and the parents were in despair because they said, look, we have this health insurance, right? We paid for it, we prepared, but our little child has used up half of her lifetime maximum. In other words, she's halfway to the cap. She's halfway to her lifetime cap, and she's hardly 1 year old. Well, this has to end. Sorry. And don't come with word games. Is it insurance? Is it not insurance? I don't give a damn what you call it. Everybody has the right to health care. Now, my approach to this was clearly Medicare for all for $100 per person per month. As long as there was any hope of getting that, I fought for that. But now, once it became Obamacare or nothing, Obamacare is obviously better than nothing. So the word for Obamacare is get into it and fight. Fight to expand it, fight to improve it, fight to reform it, fight to transform it into Medicare for all. If the private insurance companies don't do a good job, get rid of them and go to Medicare for all. There's always the Medicare alternative lurking around the corner. So if these private insurance companies sabotage or whatever else they do. There's also this question about the premium increasing. The Republicans seem to think that if a private insurance company raises its premium, that's Obama's fault. Sorry, if a private insurance company raises its premium, it's their damn fault, and they will be held accountable, and maybe they will be put out of business if it's determined that they're trying to loot and exploit and otherwise unfairly treat the people who need this health care. So that's all of that conspires against Boehner. Now, in addition to this, there's Mitch McConnell. This is very, very interesting. The Capitol Hill papers of today on the front page are telling us that McCain is acting up. An emboldened McCain eyes lead role in showdown over debt and deficit. This is a chance to split the reactionary Republicans between the moderate reactionaries, the McCain types, and the proto-fascists, right? The ones, say like Ron Paul, Mike Lee, Cruz, maybe Toomey the Toomer, maybe these characters who want to wreck the United States and bankrupt the country at all costs because that's how they think they can bring home the most loot for their rich backers. So this situation becomes the following. This week, Harry Reid finally said, I'm sick and tired of these filibusters. We've got Cordry, who's going to be head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to protect the little people against some pretty basic ripoffs. We've got Perez to be Secretary of Labor, and we've got a couple of candidates for the National Labor Relations Board. Naturally, the Republicans think all of these are communist. The agencies are communist. They shouldn't be there, so they're trying to sabotage it. So, thank God, Reed finally said, look, if you don't back down, we're going to change the rules. And like Pluto in Dante's Inferno, when Dante and Virgil meet Pluto, Pluto puts on this tremendous show of rage and threats, and Virgil throws some mud at him, and he basically deflates and shuts up. And that seems to be what these reactionary Republicans have done. So the Republicans have shown weakness. They're starting to approve these 6 or 7 nominees, and McConnell is now in a feud with McCain. McCain and his group, including Corker, apparently went out of their way to negotiate with Harry Reid and get this deal done. And Mitch McConnell was afraid to do that because he's afraid of little Rand. He's afraid of the Rand Paultard machine waiting for him at the Gulch. So they had a meeting the day before yesterday in the Republican Senatorial Caucus, and Corker and Mitch McConnell were exchanging barnyard epithets. God knows what this means. Vile, foul, obscene language among these wonderful these august personages, the Republican faction. So there's now a possibility of further division, further weakness, further chance to split these people and send them whirling off into the distance. In other words, the perspective of the destruction of the Republicans, I think, is at hand. Now, you might say, what we just went through, Obama's also very weak. Obama's weak, but a president is never as weak as these people in Congress. The president, just by virtue of the office, always can bounce back. So I would say Obama weak, Boehner weaker, McConnell weakest, and serve him right. And we'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to the second hour of this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C. Now, very briefly, we have a very distinguished and timely guest, and I'm going to get to him right away. Let me just preface this by saying we've got to build a mass movement. We've got to build a nationwide mass movement against Wall Street in favor of the Wall Street sales tax, with the subsumed goal of seizing control of the Federal Reserve and using that credit-creating power for job creation, 30 million new productive jobs, leading to a broad-based recovery here in the United States with full employment, rising standards of living, increased levels of material and intellectual culture. And we got to start somewhere. And the panorama that I've given you in the first hour is essentially the absolute bankruptcy of the two political parties. On the one hand, these reactionary Republicans, and on the other hand, Obama, joined by these really monstrous characters like Durbin, Schumer, and others. And this simply has to end. So there's got to be an alternative. It's got to start somewhere. And I think poetic justice, it can start in New York City. Time to put an end to the dominance of the Deep South under the Southern strategy. Time to have the leadership culturally and politically gravitate back towards areas that are less bigoted, less backward, let's say less dominated by small-town oligarchy. And well, that gets us to New York. Now, there's going to be a Democratic primary for the mayor of New York in September, and then there's going to be a final election in November. And I think our guest, Randy Credico, is going to have something to say about both of those elections. Now, the news, of course, is that Randy, unless something has supervened, Randy is going to be on the ballot for the Democratic primary, but he has a whole articulated strategy that goes beyond the primary all the way to November and even beyond New York City, I would hope. So let me welcome Randy.
Thank you very much, Webster. Yes, can you hear me?
Thank you so much for being with us.
Yes,
so
thank
why
you.
don't you give us a rundown on the situation? You're on the ballot,
okay,
and you're going to start your campaign. But now there's also this question of being on a second line on the ballot, the Tax Wall Street Party.
Right. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. You know, I'm a big fan of yours, and you're very informative and educational and very aware, and very generous too. So I will begin by saying I am on at this point, unless somebody now challenges me, sues me in federal court. That right now I passed muster with the Board of Elections. I needed 3,750 signatures. I got above 16,000. Almost 5 times what I needed, and so I will be on the September 10th primary ballot line against Wall Street hookers like Mr. Anthony Weiner, who's trying to promote himself as some populist because he supported the single what do you call it, the public option. That's about it. He supported the public option. But he went along in the end to go with the Obama, health care plan, which I think helped out the HMOs and the insurance companies, and he helped with the TARP. He supported the TARP. And the rest of them are pretty much getting money from Wall Street, banking, and New York City real estate interests. I'm the only one who gets none of it, and I will be on the ballot line. People have a chance to mobilize, to tell people to vote for me, tell those Democrats out there to vote for me in the September 10th primary. Now, simultaneous to this, I've launched a bid to be a independent in the November election, lest I lose in September. Now, I'm not saying that I'm going to lose. Most of the odds are stacked against me. But the people who support me for all of the reasons why they support me in September will have an option to support me in November. Do not go for the lesser of two evils or vote for someone that you don't like but win. Just like Eugene Debs said, I think he says, vote for someone that you like and lose, and rather than vote for someone that you don't like and win. And so they will have an opportunity in November to vote for me, all the parties, independents, Republicans, libertarians, conservatives, fascists, whatever. But whatever you are, you can vote for me, whatever party affiliate. As long as you're registered, you can vote for me in November. And we will carry this tax Wall Street message that you have been promoting and have been the primary exponent of for many years of a Wall Street sales tax. So that is one thing we all have. It's a common denominator to save the social safety net instead of relying on pinching small businesses, cigarette taxes, bridge and tunnel taxes, high fees to go on the subway and the buses. Instead of making all these people pay, we could have full health care in New York City. We can have that if we were to tax Wall Street just 0.5%. Actually, it's the 1% national, but New York City would benefit. We need a national sales tax to coincide with the local New York City sales tax. Just like in Alaska, they have a tax on the oil industry there, and everyone does well in Alaska because of them. That's where the oil industry has their pumps, is in Alaska. So we're looking for that in New York City to get our share of the revenue that's made here rather than it going out. And we need the national sales, a national coincide with it so these companies don't move around. They can't go to Europe. Europe is, I think, passing the same thing. I think you intimated that.
The Italians are collecting it, and others are collecting it soon. So it does exist there. The Tobin, the Euro Tobin is on.
So I think right now we can start a mass movement. We can light the fire here. People need to get involved. It's a 6-week period to petition. It ends August 20th. And I'm going to need about double. I'm going to need 7,000 signatures, about a couple hundred a day, just to be bulletproof here. And I'm looking for people who would like to, of any party, if you're a Republican, just like you can get, if you're a New York State resident, belong to any party, you can gather signatures for me from any party. And that's how we catapult ourselves onto the ballot in November and I take those in September to go along for that major issue, which is the tax Wall Street. It's all economics. We know that 74% of the public, I think you were telling me, would support such a sweeping measure because they have gotten away. They're getting free. They're getting free money. They're not even lending it out. They got all that TARP money. They're having record profit years, and yet they're just taking it all home and not paying taxes on it. That's got to come to an end, and that's what my candidacy represents. But I not just need me and your supporters. I don't want to get intimidated or somehow investigated because you're going against a big grain here. I need a lot of people to sign on to make this a massive movement right now, a massive movement that the powers that be won't be able to intimidate. People got to get on. That's it. Just tax Wall Street is the name of the new party.
That's just wonderful. Now, and I would stress to everybody, your vote will never be wasted. If you vote for a candidate with a program like this, your vote is going to mean something because you will put the Wall Street sales tax on the scoreboard. And one way or another, either we're going to have the end of civilization in this part of the world, or we're going to have the Wall Street sales tax or something very much like it. But look, let's get down to the nitty-gritty because we can talk about all the tremendous potentials that this can unlock. And I'm thinking about a lot of them. I'm sure you are too. So what do we need? I would like to call this the tax Wall Street summer. I would like to appeal to people to think about coming to New York City very soon and spending a couple of weeks gathering signatures. Now, I think we've got our break is here. The hard break is on, Randy. We're going to be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. We're on the line with Randy Credico, candidate for mayor of the great city of New York. He's going to be on the Democratic primary ballot, barring some last-minute surprise. I think the possibility of some legal chicanery exists until perhaps the end of next week. Randy will tell us. But right now we got to think about the old 1-2, right? One is the Democratic primary, and since this path is apparently open, there's then the general election in New York City. Now, the Democratic primary often considered tantamount to election as mayor, but maybe not, and maybe there will be new interest in the actual November election. So here's the question. I'm calling it Tax Wall Street Summer, and I'm urging friends and supporters of this program, people who know about the United Front Against Austerity, people who have any connection to my work, anything that I've ever done. This is the next step right now. Here it is, the summer of 2013. There's got to be a mass movement. This is the way we have this year in the United States. Otherwise, we have an election in New Jersey. We're hoping for Willie Araujo to do well there. Then we've got this clown show going on in Virginia where the Republican governor is so corrupt. But what we're left with is New York City, highly volatile, unpredictable. It's been under the heel of Bloomberg for so long. It could become explosive. It could become absolutely unpredictable. But in order to win it, you got to be in it. If you're not in it, you can't win it. So you got to be on the ballot. And I'm urging people to come forward. Now, Randy, your ability to deal with people, I understand they've got to be registered voters in the state of New York State registered voters, but otherwise they can be from Oneonta or Albany or Buffalo or any place like this.
Anybody. By the way, they can come in from Jersey if they want to, but they just have to. They can work with another registered New York voter. Just a New York voter. They can, as long as, let's say, they're both holding petition sheets, right? The guy from Jersey or from Virginia or from D.C., if he's got a petition sheet and he's got someone to sign it, the guy from the New York State that's a couple of feet away from him says, would you witness this? And that guy witnesses it, then it's good. So you don't necessarily have, as long as you have a supervisor who's a New York voter and watching those signatures go down on that sheet, then you are being helpful. And I wanted to say before I continue on that line is UFAA has already been, I probably would not have gone this far without the help of some of your supporters. Daniela Walls, she put our website together, and we were able to raise money with that website. We were able to get the message. People love the website. So you're saying,
and when you say website, Randy, when you say website, you mean Kredico 2013?
.org, and I think .com works as well, but it's Kredico2013.org, and it was a UFAA, member or whatever, supporter, associate, who designed that website and polished it and updates it and has done an incredible job. And then you have Chris Reese, the right. He has been out petitioning with me, getting 1,000 signatures himself. So that was very helpful through the dog days of the June, early July summer. And May, hopefully it cools down. But so UFAA has already been a boon to this campaign. And now we want to take their message, incorporate it into this new nominating petition, not a designating petition, which means the Democratic Party, but the nominating petition, and we call it Tax Wall Street, and then that would be the spark plug for a national movement, whether I'm the head or not. Then other people can call themselves the what do you call it, Tax Wall Street Party, just like the Green Party in California is not the same as Green Party in New York. And so you can call yourselves that, and then we can merge and actually formulate and finalize a national party. But we need the catalyst, as you call it, to get it going, and then put the powers that be on notice that there is a natural, very big following for this message. It's even bigger than the William Jennings Bryan message of the gold and silver back in the 1890s. I think that this really resonates well because we're very honest. It's not a gimmick. It's not a cliche. It's just what it is. And I expect those people who were at Occupy Wall Street, which had a huge umbrella of left and right wingers that came to that middle of the road people. They had one thing that they agreed on, that they were being screwed by Wall Street, and all of this money that's being wasted on programs that you don't want, that are not beneficial, should be going to programs that we do want, which is WIC and all of these other programs, whatever that help the safety net and for medical expenses. Wall Street can pay for it. They got plenty of dough. Just you have spoken about this repeatedly about the French aristocracy and the church not paying a fair share or paying any taxes or the royalty, which led to the crisis in France, which led to the revolution there. But once they started taxing everyone on an equal footing, they became the most powerful nation, and people, their health, their living standards went up, and that's all we need to do. They can't just tax small businesses, pizza parlors, and people who make $40,000 a year with a small apartment, exorbitant rates. Wall Street, which is a rigged game, has got to pay their share.
Now, let me just invite people to think about this. Right here, it is the summer. It's hot. If you've never been in New York City, right? Since we know that we can get people from the state of New York as New York State registered voters, they can actually witness the signatures and sign the paperwork. But you've got to have people who get people to the table and invite them and hold up posters and all the rest of it. They can, as you say, they can come from anywhere.
They can do anything. They can hold up posters, anything they want to do. But they should come in here, just like I think you might, just like the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. Come over here and let's save the republic here.
Yeah, the Tax Wall Street Summer, the Tax Wall Street Brigade. We'll think of something to call it. But the opportunity to spend a couple of weeks on the sidewalks of New York. The sidewalks of New York.
Well, you are now an official advisor. You are an official advisor to this movement because it's really been created out of people that are associated with you and yourself. And so this is something that has your name written on it, and you are an official advisor to the Tax Wall Street Party nationally and in New York City.
Hang on, hold that thought. We'll be back in just a second on World Crisis Radio with Randy Credico, the next mayor of New York. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. So this is what I think we're left with here. We've got just about 1 month. Right now it's Friday, July 19th. The deadline for these signatures to be on the November ballot, as not as the Democratic Party now, but as the Tax Wall Street Party led by Randy Credico. The closing date for those is the 20th of August. We got 1 month. I'm urging people, think about your summer vacation, and rather than going on some alienated tourist thing, or even if you're coming to New York, don't spend your time going to Broadway shows or whatever it is. Don't take the tour bus, but get the actual the political experience of the sidewalks of New York. Go out and gather signatures for the Randy Credico Tax Wall Street campaign. You can change world history this summer. This is a way to change the course of human affairs on this planet. We need a Tax Wall Street Party, and here's the best and probably the only chance this year. And who knows what we're going to have next year. Next year is going to be much harder because of the congressional election. So that's what I'm hoping for, Randy. The one thing that occurs to me is the problem of accommodations. Where could people stay?
Well, listen, they should, Chris, one of your guys, they should email Facebook me, A, or B, email me at Kredico2013 at Gmail, Kredico2013 at Gmail. They don't need to be here every day. If they want to come in and come out from Jersey, we'll pay their expenses to come in and come out, and get signatures and give them some kind of, make sure that they're fed and everything. And, I'm living in a small place, but I'm sure we'll be able to find some accommodations. Like Chris, who's one of your guys, I know he was putting people up this summer that were helping out with various UFAA deals. So we'll find a place for people who want to help out, but they can come in on a day deal. This is not an all-day thing. Come in for 5 or 6 hours. You get, 50, 100 signatures a day. We're going to be there. We just need about 7,500, double what the minimum is, and I think we'll do it. And I'll get a couple of thousand of those myself because I'm an expert at getting signatures. And they just go to that Kredico 2013 at gmail.com. Kredico 2013 at gmail.com, and we will find ways to what they can do, where they're coming from, and we'll make it happen.
Let me also suggest, if people if you feel more comfortable dealing with me, go to tarpley.net, go to the Speakers Bureau page. There is a contact feature there. If you're interested in volunteering for the Kredico campaign, do send me a message through the Speakers Bureau contact page, and I can put it on the inside track so that you won't be just dealing with what may seem like an anonymous web page, but yes. You're going to have me pass it on to Randy. I'll be glad to do it, because I think this is the most important thing to do this summer.
Well, yes, it would only take a few hours, 3 or 4 hours of people's time every day. Come into the Big Apple. Let's go out. We'll drink some ale and pizza and get signatures and get this thing on the ballot. It's a very small threshold, and then it has international implications. It's right now before they change it. I'm sure in the next election cycle they're going to make the standard much higher. 3750 is such an attainable goal. When you run for governor, you need 15,000 minimum, which means you need about 40,000, and that is not so easy. And plus, most of the signatures when I ran against Schumer, 95% came from New York City, and I was barely able to get 10,000 signatures. And I had 2 people that infiltrated my campaign at Schumer, I believe, took care of they infiltrated and they derailed the campaign coming in with no signatures when I did a joint petition on it. I don't want people to do that this time around, but I suspect with the tax Wall Street, there's going to be someone that's going to volunteer, that's going to be a fifth columnist, that's going to turn in some bad signatures, and I'm going to be comfortable with that. So I got to be real rigorous and vigorous and try to get 10,000 signatures. I got 16,000. I want to get at least 10,000 signatures. That could be done. We've got 32 days right now. That's only an average of 300 a day. If you have 10 people doing this, that's all you need is 30 signatures. You can get that in an hour.
Very good.
2 hours.
This
and
should
don't
be
miss
done.
this opportunity. This is an opportunity that's going to be rare. And I'll already have the momentum from the September crew that's coming along with me. I'll already have this massive, not massive, but I'll have a nice following. There'll be ads everywhere. And then they're going to say, where do we go? Do we go with the Democrat that beat you? I say, no, you go with me.
All right, now let's look forward. The first appointment we have is there's going to be a candidates debate, isn't there, that's going to be televised?
There's going to be a lot of debates. I'm going to be on some of them. I'm not going to be on all of them. They're going to have artificial standards that they're going to impose, but it's okay. Beppe Grillo, whether you like his politics or not, I'm not even sure I know what they are, but the Italian,
don't like him.
Well, I don't care whether you like him or not. The fact is that he was able to do it without one debate or one commercial. So I'm saying that it is achievable. If a guy like that, a louse like him, can do it with no internet, with no debates, no ads, I can do it. Okay,
you're head and shoulders above him. Don't even demean yourself by comparing yourself to that.
The only analogy is that this guy, I don't even know what he stands for, but the fact is he got on the ballot and he got a significant amount of votes. Maybe that shows you how bad the rest of Italian politics happens to be. I don't know. I don't know who you would have supported there if you just had to go in blindly and hold your nose. Here you don't have to hold your nose or go in blind. You want to pull the lever for me. They're going to have the old-fashioned levers this time, not the electronic ones. They're going to have the old-fashioned ones where you push a knob. You pull over to the right, and then
the voting machine
now like a slot machine. Yes, we're having the voting machines, which are old is good. Tried and true.
Let's get back to this debate, right? Give us a thumbnail sketch of the opposition. We have Anthony Weiner. What do we know about him? And who are the others?
Well, we know Anthony Weiner.
Give us a quick overview.
Anthony Weiner is Chuck Schumer, a small Chuck Schumer. But whatever you think of Chuck Schumer, you'd have the same thoughts about Anthony Weiner, and your crowd's smart enough to know that they're both shills for Wall Street and the big banks. So that takes care of him. All right. The second most popular, second one in the polls is Christine Quinn, also getting money from Goldman Sachs, and the candidate of what's his name, Lloyd Blankfein, is supporting her, as are the major real estate interests. So if Lloyd Blankfein is supporting you, that's kiss to death with your crew, right?
Right.
Then you have Bill Thompson, whose chief bundler of money happens to be Alphonse D'Amato. So we know D'Amato is controlled by the banks and Wall Street, right? So those are the three top runners, the three top ones, and then you got the rest of the field is made up of Bill de Blasio, who's okay, but he gets money from Wall Street as well. They all do. And then there's John Liu. I don't know where he gets his money. But hang
on 1 second. We have one more segment. Randy, please stay with us. We'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio, our final segment. We're honored to have Randy Credico, next mayor of the city of New York, whose name has just been put on the Democratic primary ballot. That's September 10th. And he's just outlining his plan to administer a 1-2 punch to Wall Street, first with his Democratic primary campaign, and then in a second phase going all the way to that proverbial first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, an independent, a third party, a new party called the Tax Wall Street Party. And I urge people, make this the Tax Wall Street summer. If you haven't been to New York, if you've lost touch under Bloomberg, right? If Bloomberg drove you away, now's the chance to come back, see what things look like, and instead of doing alienated tourism, actually get in there and taste the nitty-gritty of politics on the sidewalks of New York. And, obviously, as Randy says, mix it up. Randy, is there any media reaction to you at this point?
Oh, yeah. First of all, someone called up Brian Lair yesterday on the WNYC, NPR. Somebody had called up and said, why are blacks supporting Anthony Weiner and Elliot Spitzer? And so one of the callers said, well, they should be supporting, if all things were equal, Randy Credico because of his great record on civil rights and not being a career politician, but running a civil rights group for 15 years. And Larry says, well, maybe, I know he's a comedian, I know he's running, but maybe we'll have him on and have some fun with him. But then, I've won 3 of the debates. If you go to Google and look up my name, you'll see that I came out on top. Weiner couldn't follow me up at the Schomburg Center. And then Monday I'll be in that paper that everyone in the subway reads, Metro News. You're going to have a picture of me, getting petition signed. And then the Observer, Errol Lewis from New York One had me on. And I expect that since the other candidates, people find it very dull. It's so dull that they had to get 2 geeks, Weiner and Spitzer, who really are kind of like geeks, like having the Elephant Man running. No one even gives a damn about their politics. They just they had sexual scandals, so they become freak shows. For better or worse, I'm not making judgments on some of their indiscretions, privately. But you know what? The media is only focusing on them because of those indiscretions, and they become geeks, and we lose track of what this election's all about. And it's been 20 years of austerity for poor people and the middle-class people. It's been austerity. It's been heavy taxation on poor people and middle-class people, whether it be the scam lotto cards or the bridge and tunnels, the outrageous cuts in subway service, and then the outrageous fare hikes. These are all regressive taxes, and they can all be straightened out if, in fact, there was a Wall Street sales tax, which nobody's talking about except for me, and everyone doesn't want to talk about it. And that, I suspect, is one of the reasons why they don't like me at these debates. And because you'll hear the same old bromide that, well, they're going to go out of town, then they're going to leave town. Well, they can't leave town because we're talking about a national Wall Street sales tax that would keep them here, then have criminal penalties if they leave. And the problem is that Governor Cuomo is getting money from the same interests. 99% of his money comes from those that give 1,000 or more. 99% that give 1,000 or more. So we're not going to get any help from Albany here. And it's got to be a grassroots movement. It's got to be your following. People are fed up with being overtaxed, underserved, and while others who make all the money pay no taxes.
Fantastic.
There.
So what's the first event? I mean, what if people?
Well, I'm right now. I got a debate on Monday. I got the gay men's health crisis.
Tell us where and when.
Debate.
Give us the details.
Yes, now it's coming up Monday. Then I have one. I got 2 or 3 next week. And there's so many events next week.
So you're right in the thick of the campaign immediately.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So what I'm saying is that there's a lot of things coming up over the next week and a half. I just put out an ad you can see on Facebook where the Geico endorses me. So it's a nice parody, and I'm going to be doing a lot of humorous ads that are interesting instead of the standard dull ads that you've been seeing that are made by these huge Madison Avenue organizations with the same music, the same graphics, the same crawls and everything. We actually have interesting ads that we're putting up there, and so far I'm on like 3 debates coming up. So I'm out on all of them. The Campaign Finance Board, they have a regulation that if you opt in and take public money for your campaign, which I will not do, it's a complete scam operation. Then you, I didn't raise that much either. There's a huge threshold. So a person that raises $250,000 at $175 increments, they get 6 to 1 on that money. But if you get $25,000 or $50,000, which I plan to have, which I've raised, I can't get any. I can't get the 6 to 1 on that. And so I opt out. And by opting out, they get 9 to 1, and then they get to get on certain Campaign Finance Board reform, which is a complete oxymoron here, because it helps out only I call it the incumbent protection law. And that's what it does. It helps out the incumbents, the ones who get money from Lloyd Blankfein, who bundles it. He gets everyone at Goldman Sachs to give the maximum, and then on top of the $49.50 that he gives, the $175 of that, they get 6 months. So at $49.50, they're really getting $62.50, and he gets hundreds of people to give that, and those people get not only the Wall Street money, but they get public money, and it's unwittingly given because people really don't want to give their money to that. They'd rather have that money being spent on health care, on transportation, and then funny thing is they're paying for it, and Wall Street's giving money to make sure they don't have to pay for it.
And we can't forget, in terms of wasting the money of the city of New York, General David Petraeus teaching one course at the College of City of New York, CUNY, $200,000 for one class for this CIA general who is so heavily implicated in the death squads of Syria.
Yeah, he's a real bad guy, I really find it, I'm glad you brought him up because, everyone barked about him when Bush brought him in. And I remember Move On said David Petraeus, whatever. And what happens? He gets elevated by Obama. Why are all these liberals complaining about that?
Well, why is it Move On complaining about the non-viability of the Democratic Party? That's why we need the Tax Wall Street Party, because the two existing parties are worthless.
They are. They both rot from the parties rot from the head down. I'm happen to be one, but you can call me a fifth columnist within the Democratic Party because I have nothing in common with them. I have nothing in common with either party. They're all hacks, flacks, and what's the other one that rhymes with it? Something that rhymes
with
hacks,
I thought.
Huh?
Maybe not Hicks in this case. Normally Hicks and hacks.
Yeah, well,
some of them are flack, right? The flacks are the ones who do the public relations. Anyway, you use the Democratic primary as a taxi to get where you want to go. And that's
a lot of people that do not want to be part of this. A lot of people in the Democratic Party are fed up with it, and they're holding their noses. But now they can breathe freely and vote for a guy that represents the party that they thought it was going to be, but never was. You know what I mean?
Very good. And with this, we've just beginning to scratch the surface of the tremendous implications, because the implications and ramifications of your campaign go in many directions, and one of them is to create a crisis in the Democratic Party. And my perspective is there are really two parties there. It has to split. There's a Wall Street Democrat Party, and then there's a populist party.
Yes. They got two horses in the same race. You know what I mean?
There we go. And we've run out of time, Randy. Thank you very much. It's Kredico2013.org. If you want to volunteer,
and email
now. And
the email is Kredico2013@gmail. Okay?
At Gmail. So do come forward, volunteer. It's the Tax Wall Street Summer. We need volunteers. We need contributions, too. Anything you can do. But this is the vehicle you have this summer here in the United States to get something done. And we'll be back next week with among other things, more news about the Randy Credico campaign. Thanks, Randy.